All right, welcome everyone. It is November 12th, 2024. This is the 9 a.m. board briefing. Please note the record reflect that in the conference room, we have Commissioners Jordan, Waldrop, and Kearns. We will be joined shortly by Commissioner French, and Commissioner CUNY may be joining us virtually a little later this morning. So now that we have been unburdened by what has been, we will now lead off with Justin Johnson. Take it away.
Excellent. Good morning, commissioners. Scott.
Somebody got it.
We are giving you our annual update as we prepare for the January 1 contract renewals. So bear with us. It's going to be a lightning round. And the information we provide is going to highlight the areas that there may be changes expected and or any funding changes. Contracts, for the most part, have continued and will continue running the services as we've discussed and the board has already approved in 2024. As we look to 2025, really these are just major changes. We also have an update for our ISW project to provide some information from our team. And then we're going to have a ask here at the end, which we have legal joining us to better align and support the functioning of the requests that come to the board. Without further ado, let's jump right in. One of the major ones is our upstream contract with the Healthcare Authority. This ensures that all of our behavioral health services contracted to the state are provided, the majority of which falls under our crisis system. That is our sub-delegated contracts with our crisis providers, and then the subsequent agreements with our managed care organizations for their members. That comprises the vast majority of our HCA contract, specifically ITA and the services included therein. That will continue, no major changes there. The addition of the additional non-Medicaid services that we'll be covering are also in there. The list of providers on the next page are there. This is not an exhaustive list, but some of the main ones that we have that provide services throughout the region. This includes not only the HCA funded or state funded services, but also the subsequent downstream contracts that we have funded under the county's local dollars. So what we're looking at is continuing the main contract with the state to ensure the flow of money, and then the board's approval for the additional local dollars to support programs will also be added in there as well. In addition to these, I think the major highlights, we were able in this last year, due to the wonderful work of our fiscal team and our leadership team at the CSD, to actually offset some costs when using the mental health sales tax. So in our allocation for the year, we had a certain amount of dollars set aside, but in 2024, we're able to shift certain state dollars to cover almost all of the mental health sales tax allocated for 2024. That's wonderful. That meant that went into our reserve because we were able to find other dollars. However, in 2025, we don't expect to be able to receive that additional amount, especially as the state looks to a budget shortfall. So they're looking to either maintain and or reduce certain contracts. So though this was wonderful in 2024, you'll see us continue with the same services, but without the additional proviso dollars that were given in last year. There are certain other ones that remain. Specifically the acute care diversion funds that do pay for the entirety of the Spokane Regional Stabilization Center services provided under our contract. But other than that, we don't expect to receive any additional dollars, save one area, and that's under 988 for crisis response, mobile rapid response teams. So that's what we will be continuing. And the board will see those come forward in the December period for the January. All right, now I'm going to turn it over to Brian to give an update on our DD contracts from GSHS. Brian?
Hi, Brian Nichols, the Developmental Disabilities Program Manager for Spokane County. First, I want to give you my heartfelt thank you to this board for any support of our program. It really helps some of the most vulnerable people in our country. So contracting, the news is good news. We need to anticipate ongoing contract with the DSHS, DDA, Developmental Disabilities Administration. We'll be having a mid-year amendment. We expect to have that in December. That will add some additional funds to serve additional people. In addition, we have our, what we call school to work and bridge contracts that are in process now to be in place January 1st. And that's for folks that were the last couple of years at school. We support them in getting them into work as they leave high school. It's a very valuable service. The bridge is something we invented. And that's to get, I know the term bridge works in a lot of social service programs, but this helps people get into service and funded through DDA ongoing support who otherwise wouldn't have it. We anticipate for the next fiscal year, starting in July, stable funding, pending what the legislature comes up with. We know there's some rumble about a downturn in funding based on fiscal forecasts, but I don't anticipate wood that it will impact our program that much. In addition, we have our mini grant contracts that is another Spokane County invention that we fund small projects for entities in our community that can provide services and support the people with developmental disabilities and their families in innovative, creative ways. So we have those contracts that we're getting prepared right now. We just recently finished making the selection, and our DDAD, our advisory board, supported what we recommended. So those will be going out the door shortly for a start date of January 1st. That's it.
Right.
Yes.
Next slide. Yeah, and this is just an overview of the list of providers that we have with our agreements that will continue. Next slide. Including the mini grants that we put out, funding the services identified by Ryan. So grand total of $120,000, but this is critical in providing necessary services and ensuring the agencies have the necessary tools to be able to provide them. A lot of it goes into training and the ability to ensure that the workforce is stable. Next slide. And here's a list of the mini grant awarded contracts. Anything of note, Brian, that you like to add on the awarded ones?
No, we have an interesting one that I find it with Isaac Foundation. They primarily with autism, and in partnership with the Spokane City Fire Department, they're going to do a fire safety education course to be conducted both at the center, the Isaac Center, and in public schools. Because they pitched up some very good proposals saying that it's important for folks with developmental disabilities to sort of understand see somebody in fire uniform that God forbid something happens at their house, that they know that these are the good guys and they know what to do, because there have been instances where that hasn't been the case. The other one of note, I think, well, another one of note is building a sensory-friendly outdoor area at the YMCA for folks who can be overstimulated. We already funded them last year for interior sensory-friendly area. They're near completion of that. I'm even to go up and see that in the next few weeks.
Which YMCA location?
North, thank you.
Okay.
And this is important because although our primary focus with our developmental disabilities division is community inclusion and employment support, comprehensively looking at how the services are provided and making sure individuals remain stable is an area that we've been focusing on, including upstream prevention, providing the tools necessary to the community to identify risks towards individuals who may be vulnerable and have the need to remain stable in that environment. So these especially sensory rooms, as well as education for caregivers, identifying individuals that might be victims and or impacted by individuals who want to cause them harm, especially as it pertains to their sexual health. And then third area is really providing the necessary calming and safe de-escalation engagement so that individuals, again, remain stable and continue to be a productive and engaging member of society. Oftentimes you see that they transition into acute care. We see a cascade effect where they're not able to engage, and we wanted to go upstream and do prevention of it. Next slide. These are the ones that applied but did not receive it based on the selection committee. And next slide. we would love to give everyone money, but limited amounts to prevent us from doing so. And then, Brian, anything on the outreach and linkage services with College Street?
That remains stable. We give them $95,000. They do matching on that, turn it to more than double that to provide ongoing. Joya, formerly Guild School. Support part of their budget.
Next slide. All right, so what we're asking for the board is all nods moving forward with presenting contracts as we've discussed to December for the January 1 continuation, both the HCA, ASO contracts and the developmental disability contracts. The all nods.
Questions, nods, we good? All right.
Excellent. Awesome.
Thanks for your work.
Thank you.
Thanks again for your support.
Of course.
Moving along with our agenda, we have an update with our ISW project. I'll let our team give an update. Ashley, if you want to give a little background.
Good morning, everyone. So next, we're going to be talking about the Institute for Student Wellness, our Initiative for Student Wellness, ISW. In fact, you'll have the whole school year report for the last year. Took us a little while to compile this, because we went from 2 schools within 1 school district to 7 schools within 5 school districts. So there's a lot more data. Our hope here today is to be able to provide you an overview of the last year, what we learned, what challenges we were able to identify and overcome, what the data indicated, and then looking forward into the future, what do we envision and anticipate for this current school year? And can we pull up the second PowerPoint presentation, please? Today I have Joshua Henderson and Katarina Rice from our Community Services Department here to talk about the ISW report. Josh and Katie both work extensively with not only our contracted providers with Spokane Public Schools and ESD 101, but also with the schools themselves, have been on the ground a lot of times in the schools while the trainers are being initiated to ensure that things are going smoothly. And we felt they would be best able to speak on ISW within the last year. So I'll turn it over to Josh and Katie.
Wonderful. Well, good morning. My name is Josh Henderson. I am a child and adolescent program administrator working under Justin and Ashley. First and foremost, I just want to say thank you to the Board of County Commissioners for all the support provided for the Initiative for Student Wellness, not only just in the advocacy and championing of the program, but of course, the allocation of funds that make implementation in each of the participating schools possible. It's truly a privilege to be able to partner with my colleague Katie in implementing the program and providing oversight. And no, again, this wouldn't be possible without all your support. So thank you for that. Our first slide here concerns a big update regarding expansion. Since piloting the program in the 2022-2023 school year, the success of ISW has propelled expansion throughout Spokane County. Beginning with Centennial Middle School and West Valley High School, the program added an additional 5 schools participating during the 2023-2024 school year, totaling 7 schools in all, as Ashley has mentioned. As noted in the slide, there are multiple factors that played a role in the selection of pilot schools, which continue to be a focus in expansion. Due to the model and program structure, ISW has been tailored to the unique needs of each school, as well as responsive to the needs of the community. This responsivity has been witnessed not only in meeting the needs of the students at each location, but also in addressing the unique barriers of specific schools. Katie will discuss in more detail some of these barriers and identified solutions in the next slides. The flexibility of ISW was principally manifest in the onboarding at East Valley High School. And again, it's one of the schools that was added more than halfway through the year. And again, implementation occurred in response to multiple deaths within the student body. This included student suicides and an automobile accident that took the lives of several students. Through support from the Board of County Commissioners and advocacy from East Valley School District leaders, ISW was successfully integrated within a short window of time, showcasing ISW as a stalwart in school-based services. Go to the next slide. And these numbers here are just some the themes that we noticed throughout this last year. With expansion, of course, has come the ability to provide more services to youth in need, which again is the focus. In particular, upstream interventions and connections to ongoing care, both a primary focus of ISW. From 284 screenings during the first school year, 679 this last year, the program has greatly extended its reach. A common theme Katie and I have heard from not only clinicians, but school staff is the ability for ISW to identify students who were previously unidentified as needing help. Through universal screening of entire grade levels, ISW has been able to reach students who may not have otherwise accessed services. During the school year, roughly 60% of students were identified as tier 3, tier 2. And just as a reminder for the board, the way the screening works is based on student responses. It automatically categorizes those responses based on tier level. Tier 3 students are seen by the end of the day. Those are typically obviously students that are endorsing self-harm and need to be seen. Tier 2 students would maybe be students endorsing anxiety, substance use, depression, and the follow-up is within 14 days for that population. And of that group, 83% of those individuals were not receiving any sort of therapeutic services in the community. And research shows that students are more likely to receive support when offered at school, making ISW an ideal program to address the youth mental health crisis. Additionally, clinicians within the school also expanded the reach of the program by offering groups open to students that address various topics related to mental health. Group topics include transition to adulthood in high school, for those transitioning from middle school to high school, groups on suicide education and prevention, expressive art groups, and many more. These groups are an important component of highlighting the versatility and innovation of ISW to meet the student needs, adapt to information received from the screeners, targeting specific areas of emphasis. And for more information on our ISW data throughout the year specific to each school, hand it over to Katie if there's questions on anything that I shared.
Question. How many are tier 3 specifically? Of that 60%, you know?
Question, and we do have the report here.
Yeah.
Just, yeah, you can work on it. Just another one on it says 83% of students reported not receiving. Is that 83% of the 60%?
Yes, of the tier 3, tier 2 that were not receiving any sort of treatment services. Yeah.
Thanks. Sure, we can come back to that.
Yeah, we'll get that for you.
So good morning, my name is Katie Rice. I'm a program administrator with the VHASL. And if I could have the next slide, please. And just to echo Josh's sentiments, thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to present this information. We're very proud of the program and honored to be a part of it. And just want to thank the Board of County Commissioners for the opportunity to provide these services. So this year, as mentioned, we screened 679 students across 6 schools, providing essential mental health support and resources for our youth. Freeman and Centennial Middle Schools and Freeman, Cheney, Riverside, and East Valley High Schools all participated, with East Valley being one of our largest contributors with 179 students screened. While staffing shortages temporarily limited our efforts at West Valley High School, we're thrilled to announce that screening there have resumed this school year. Our clinicians provided direct treatment services to 129 students, and our intervention efforts extended to nearly 100 additional referrals. These referrals were to critical services such as substance use treatment, food and clothing resources, and academic support. Through engagement services, 262 students received ongoing care and support, with a total of 495 services provided. And so we found that the results of the survey were telling, and that 1 in 4 students reported feeling depressed, 1 in 3 experienced anxiety. And through ISW, we're addressing these needs head on, achieving more than anticipated in the number of students served, and garnering positive feedback from students and stakeholders alike. One clinician from Cheney High School shared how the program brought students onto their radar, these students who might have gone otherwise unnoticed. And that's feedback we've gotten time and time again from each school, each district. If I could get the next slide, please. So turning to the current school year, we've fully expanded into 5 districts, and we're aiming to screen over 1,000 students across 8 schools. So far, just within 60 days, we've screened 350 students. And so building on the success of our first year pilot, we've refined our approach to serve even more students efficiently. Our clinicians have strengthened networks both within the schools and throughout the community, creating pathways for students to access the most appropriate care. This collaborative approach not only broadens support available to these students, but also enables our clinicians to expand screenings to additional classrooms and grade levels at a greater rate than the first year of this program. And through this, we're ensuring that no student is left without the opportunity for help. So again, we'd like to extend our thanks for supporting this program and making a difference for our communities, for our students, our families, and school staff.
Yeah, I think the major highlight, team's done some amazing work. There's a lot of amazing work being done in these schools. There's thousands of hours of service being provided. There are individuals being served that would not have otherwise, and regardless of insurance coverage. That is amazing. that Spokane County stepped up in providing those, and for youth that may not have ever entered into a traditional behavioral health engagement service. So Spokane County continues to lead. We continue to get requests from the state and from Oregon and Idaho to pilot in their states. Of course, we don't have that ability. In fact, we're at this cusp now where we're not planning to expand to more schools in this next year. There'll be a substantial amount of that have to be a board direction, but we are at the point of needing almost designated staff from our team to monitor and engage with these schools. And the schools have been asking for more. So as we move forward, again, we'll continue to update the board, but the direction or expansion of this program for the school year of 2025-2026, we're trying to be strategic and looking at how we can continue it. Again, board has approved the funding as an ongoing appropriation for an annual amount, so that continues to remain fully funded. Any additional amount would have to be.
Justin, can I ask, so you had two stats up there about 1 in 3 students have experienced anxiety, 1 in 4 depression. I assume there's different stats or surveys that have been done in other parts of the country. Are we sort of on par with the rest of the country? Are we higher levels? Are we lower levels? Any idea where we are compared to other parts of the country?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's worth noting, I think even just within the state, I can speak specifically that Spokane County and a lot of these measures are higher than across the state. And some of that data is actually revealed in the Healthy Youth Survey. One of the trends that we're seeing though, which is great, from 2021 to 2023, those trends are actually going down in relation to depression and anxiety. So in 2021, there were roughly, for the 10th grade population, about 40% of individuals, I believe, is experiencing depression, and then roughly 70% reported feeling some level of anxiety. And those numbers are trending downward. So the most recent 2023 Healthy Youth Surveys for Spokane County is about 6 to 8% down from 2021. So we're kind of going in that direction, but some of those stats on the survey, Spokane County was higher than the state average.
Okay, thank you.
I would add to that, because in working together and identifying the needs of our residents, those communities that were struck by the fires, for example, or had student deaths, those were the schools that were chosen so that we could be serving the neediest of our students. And so because of that, some of the anxiety and depression scores might reflect or be a little bit higher than average, but because our sample sizes are so small, we can't necessarily make inferences at this time.
Did you have a question? Yeah.
So, how does that, can you remind me again, how does it work? Great job. Thanks for all you're doing. I think it's a wonderful program. And the idea that any student, no matter like what their insurance level is or where, but how does that work then? Do you try to refer if the student does have insurance to be able to be seen? Do you try and make a referral, but then if it's not successful, they're seen at the school, or how does that work?
Yeah, so
Because I know there's long waiting lists sometimes, right? When you refer someone to a behavioral health specialist.
Yeah, and the beauty of this program and incorporating the treatment services as a part of it versus what is being done over in King County is when it's identified, we bridge the gap between when a service can be connected and engaged. So oftentimes if there's a 2-week wait, we are able to bridge that gap and see them. If it's 2 weeks, 3 weeks, they're provided a service until they're directly connected.
Okay.
The moment they are, then we transition that care over to the most appropriate, but they can still be seen. I think the challenge we saw was, when the numbers reflect this, the vast majority of students may report feeling anxiety, depression, and various other challenges, but they don't want to actually go into a traditional service. So how do you resolve that upstream so it doesn't result in a diagnosis and ongoing outpatient care? Obviously, the referral needs to occur if that is the case, but many can be resolved within the short amount of time that an episodic issue arises. But yes, we connect with all of the services there. Some of them have more robust than others, but even communities and schools to address food insecurity and other challenges.
Right,
That
right.
is all occurring as a part of an integrated model with our schools.
I don't think Freeman has communities and schools, but do the other schools, West Valley, East Valley, I think a lot of them do have that service. Cheney, I know does.
Yes.
Okay. Great, thank you.
All right, thank you, Dan. Moving along, because I know we are need to get to this. The remainder of these are called out specifically because they're unique downstream, but some are paid for mental health sales tax and some are specific programs taken on by the county. We're gonna go over those briefly. If you have any questions on those, again, major updates on these sections are gonna be focused on, is there any change? So.
First one we have up, is Volunteers of America, and that's through our behavioral health transitional support program, pilot program. And this is placing 2 behavioral health support specialists within 2 of the shelters that BOA operates in our community. And these individuals provide therapeutic transitional housing support services to individuals that may be experiencing transitional housing or homelessness as a result of their behavioral health disorder. So recognizing that traditional engagement through outpatient services may not be something that they can be served through or that aligns best with their needs at that time. So providing individuals who can provide more upstream engagement as well as provide outpatient services ongoing as needed. And we're just hoping for a continuation of that program through BOA. Next, we have NAMI, which is providing behavioral health and community services. So expanding the scope and the partnership with NAMI to be beyond just education, but also outreach and support services to connect to behavioral health supports, as well as other supports such as housing, food, other social supports that help an individual stay in recovery, including peer services. Again, no change to this contract, just hoping for a continuation of that. Next is our behavioral health step-down services. This is step-down housing for individuals with a behavioral or mental health diagnosis referred by their caseworkers into step-down housing, which is supported housing from a boarding home, from inpatient facilities, or from the community to provide recovery to individuals working on their independence within the community. So still a level of support as they transition from one of those more acute settings or needing to develop more of those independent living skills. And we contract with LaPlante Rentals and Sunshine Facilities for this and are just hoping to continue that as well. Next slide, please.
The important aspect of that is both the BHTSP, the step down, even NAMI allow for additional housing support, reducing the impact of homelessness for specifically chronically mentally ill, so that they are not on the street and providing that next level of care. That's part of our model of trying to provide on top of the additional $2 million we put out for housing support and emergency rental support as part of our programs. Next slide. This is our Raintree systems. This is our EMR system. We're asking the board to continue to allow us to fund that. It's primarily funded through all of our HCA funding and our Medicaid funding through CARES. We are continuing the contract to them because it's an integrated system that provides all of our pass-through claims and reporting. So no change in this, other than resources obviously have been reduced in terms of support and some of the costs have increased, but overall, the cost benefit we get from maintaining the service outweighs seeking out any additional one. That may change in the future, but we do recommend the board continue to allow us to contract with Raintree. Next slide.
The next one pertains to PATH, which is Projects.
Can I just
Oh,
ask
go
a
ahead.
question on that?
Yeah.
How integrated is that system with other EMRs? So does it have information that's easily shared with other systems in the health world or not?
It is.
Okay.
So all of our providers report all their claims through there, do all of our remittance for any of the inpatient claims. It we have highly customized it from a Spokane sense. So ours is better than other people who use it because we were able to develop and create it back when we had this. So our experience is better. I know 2 other areas that aren't because they don't able to take on our customization. If you're asking whether or not it connects to like Epic, no, it doesn't. And that's because Epic doesn't want to share the information with ours. And we don't have a business agreement. And that cost for that is exorbitant.
Right.
So could it be possible? Yes, but for now, for all of our providers, yes, it's integrated within their systems.
Thanks.
And then rolled up to the healthcare authority as well.
Good.
The PAT project is through Frontier Behavioral Health, and they receive an agreement with the healthcare authority to provide projects for assistance in transition for homelessness, which incorporates including connecting to individuals to insurance and to other behavioral health supports and services, including housing and other disability benefits to help stabilize and facilitate recovery. This is a connection for individuals. We provide a match, and this has been an ongoing partnership over the last decade, I believe, to serve individuals. So the funding that we provide helps individuals that would not otherwise be served through this program.
Yeah, and last year it was like 42 to 48 individuals served. We expect to be on track this year. And again, ensuring individuals aren't lost in the system, they're connected. The small amount we put into this to match, the benefit outweighs any of the impact. Next slide. And this is just an update that we will be receiving the MCO contracts and for CARES and ASO. For the BHASO, that's all of our crisis contracts to run the crisis response system. We've negotiated great rates and we have reconciliation. So all of our costs associated with crisis system, we've been made whole thanks to our wonderful fiscal team able to do all of that work, which is exhaustive. But again, this saves money in the long term and ensures that those covered members are paid out responsibly by their managed care organizations. And for CARES, next slide, have a fee for service and in some programs a capitated rate. So again, fully funds our services in the community through our CARES program. So there's been no issue or potential for a delta that could put us at risk. So again, we negotiate agreements quite well, and we always ensure that they're fully funded. You'll be seeing these come through. No major changes in this one. There is one expansion in our crisis system that we're asking the MCOs to cover. That's our expanded stabilization. We talked about this one. We got that SAMHSA grant from federal government. We were one of the only ones in the state of Washington to do mobile response stabilization services. They're adding that now finally a year and a half later for a recommendation. So that'll just be now added and built to the MCOs. Excellent. And do you want to join us? Yeah, no major changes on those expected. The last request we have before the board has to do with how many agreements we come through. I know we do a lot and you guys hear from me a lot. And oftentimes any changes to the downstream requires to go back to the board. What we have been discussing internally, and we had mentioned both Scott and executive leadership, is based on how these come through, oftentimes the changes for the downstream provider agreements, when those occur, aren't drastic. And they aren't having to do with total funding coverage, maybe programmatic element, it may be requirement for us to shift to just to funding already approved by the board, but because it was different, we had to put it forward. We're putting a specific request to add some language to our resolutions as part of our provider amendment agreements. So this would be any agreement that the board has already approved on the upstream and the initial agreement, any changes thereafter not having to do specifically to major funding and or programmatic elements, shifts or changes that need for us to adapt quickly to allow the program to be engaged. This would reduce the overall burden of these contracts. We're able to make that change internally without having to submit it to the board and reduce the number of requests that the board receives. I brought Jasper here. He's our attorney who's provided some background as to the legal side of it.
Absolutely. Yeah, and as Justin said, there's a ton of templates, contracts that come through. And the board sees a lot of those already. We're just trying to make sure that with these provider agreements, that those can be handled efficiently and we're not taking up too much of this time to get these through. We believe this is an easy change to make to the resolutions, should only be a sentence long or so, that will continue to have approval by form for the legal department and continue briefing the board on substantive changes as they do come up. We're just trying to release the headache of trying to handle so many agreements at one time and a limited legislative agenda.
Okay, and Scott, you've been working with them on this?
Yeah, we've chatted on this one too. It's not unlike what we do with other agreements where the board signs the original one and you authorize the ability for some amendments with certain parameters in it to be signed by the department head or whatnot. So with these being mostly administrative in nature, the recommendation is for the board to give authority for Justin to be able to execute those minor amendments after that. Just it reduces the amount of administrative burden.
I'm fine with that. Is that, would we have to pass a resolution granting that authority at a future date? Is that how
It
that
would
work?
come, I believe, yes, be correct or wrong, it would come with each resolution that you approve for executing the contract would delineate the authority to sign future amendments with that. Okay, so it just happened as a normal course of coming through with your resolutions.
And we can do a master resolution that gives Justin that authority in reference back to that resolution to make it even more clear.
Are these mostly just amount changes of funding? What's an example of the most frequent amendment? What does that
So,
look like?
yeah, so it would only be a downstream provider agreement. So the board would approve it in January 1st to contract with FBH for crisis. In our work with them, the board has approved a cap that we have contracted out. The board, in that, they realize they've not expended funds in one area, but have looking like they may expend additional funds in one area. So what we would do is just amend the contract to allow for them to access the other amount. No amount changes occur in that contract, but it frees us up because the board initially approved only the money for that specific section. That's one area. Another one was when HCA sends a change in programmatic elements. So mobile rapid responder, so language changes and how we were supposed to implement the programming. But the actual amounts, none of the other expectations or coverage changes. We usually end up having to send those back to the board to a minor change for something programmatic that doesn't actually affect the service in any way. And this would not impact upstream contracts at all. Those would still continue to go to the board. So full authority still resides for any of the funding amounts allocated out to the providers.
We're good.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up, Lewis Graff. Sewer service fee.
Good morning. Late last month, we had the annual wastewater policy advisory board meeting and we had discussed proposed rate increase and they discussed it and moved to propose basically a 75-cent increase to the monthly sewer bill for a typical single-family residence. And so that breaks down to a 25-cent increase to the sewer service fee and a 50-cent increase to the wastewater treatment plant charge fee. So overall, it's a 1.5% increase that we would be looking at. This is pretty closely in line with how we've been doing rate increases, in recent years. The last two total increases per month were $1, and then back in 2019, we had an increase of 50 cents. So this is kind of in keeping with our typical approach of small but incremental increases in our monthly sewer service fees. Wanted to bring that to the board and see if there's any question or like to discuss it.
Questions? Scott?
Louis, you want to give a quick overview of who's on that policy advisory board as well, the commissioners and?
Yeah, so we have the two commissioners, CUNY and Kearns, and then there's two councilmen from the city of Spokane Valley, and then a position at large, which was Bill Gothman, and looks like it'll be Arnie Woodard next year will be the new person on that board. And so we talk kind of all things wastewater, particularly finances, and just projects moving forward.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Doug Chase. Looks like we got you for back-to-back presentations here.
It's that time of year where we're discussing fees for next year. And with me today is Trish Truitt, our finance manager, and Rachel Hanson, our recreation manager. Yeah. And we're gonna speak first to golf fees for 2025. And I'll start us off with a little overview. We do similar to other areas within the department. We have in this case, 6-year, and we actually look 20 years ahead for capital improvements, trying to plan way ahead in advance. Just thought I'd highlight a few projects that we were able to complete in-house or otherwise with our golf fund. And we had some stairs that needed replaced as a safety item there at Lake Todd Creek Golf Course, as well as an exterior door down in that basement, long overdue. We're pretty excited to get just a few little things done. Next slide, please. At Liberty Lake, we completed a cart path and drainage repair there on 13 Green, and we're doing some studying work on Fair 4 Fairway, where we've had an increase in some errant golf balls, and we did install some signage there to help educate the community and bring that caution to the attention of our golfers. Next slide, please.
So I can remember maybe 5 or 6 years ago where attendance for golf was dropping off. And we were being challenged because old folks were dying too soon and young kids weren't interested in the game. Has that transitioned yet?
Yes.
Or
We have a great slide that's gonna.
We got more
show you
swingers on the
exactly.
course.
We do. We have a lot more
In fact,
clubs being swinged on the course. Yes, absolutely.
okay.
And we've got a really, yeah, in fact, I don't want to give all the excitement away, but like record year. So we have some really neat numbers to show you. So without further ado, Meadowood, some in-house landscaping there. If you look at the before and after, that's been a in-house project utilizing talent we have within our capital projects team with landscape architecture, combined with the superintendent and his team doing the work themselves, and really looks great. We have some siding work on the outside of the building that's in progress right now, being completed. We're working on, again, just some Otterbeins we had to replace, and these are just things that we do and plan well in advance and utilize, help utilize our fund balance to cover. So next slide, please. And with that, speaking of rounds, I'll transition to Trish.
Thank you. I'm going to start with a quick review of rounds and past sales. Rounds by year, this chart shows a snapshot of rounds played from 2019 to 2024 are projected. Rounds have increased 26% since 2019. The second chart shows 2024 round types. 28% of rounds played were a discount pass holder. 24% of rounds played were from individuals without a pass for 18 holes, followed by 11% for 9-hole play pass without a pass, Loyalty rounds make up 10% of rounds played, and tournaments make up 7% of rounds played. Next slide, please. 2024 pass sales and redemptions. The adult season pass was new this year. 10 passes were sold, and on average, these pass holders played 65 times each. 23 senior season passes were sold. On average, these pass holders played 78 times. Nearly 1,000 military discount passes were sold. This offering continues to be popular and appreciated. Next slide, please. As part of the capital planning process, revenue and expense is projected for 6 years, along with projecting the rest of 2024. Your board packet included a detailed 6-year projection for years 25 through 30.
Go back to your previous slide.
Yes.
Help me understand on the senior military discount pass, we sold a lot of them, but it was very few used. What do you have any idea why that dynamic? Because some of the other pass programs are being used very, very well, but that one is not.
Well, I think there's such a good deal that the golf pros are really promoting them. They pay for themselves in, I want to say, 3 rounds. So those folks that might not play a lot are still buying them because they pay off and then they're saving those
Okay.
dollars.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so with an average number of rounds of 5 or 8, they're coming out well ahead.
Yes.
And if you look at the regular discount cards, they're average, what, we had just under 1,300 and average play is 7. So I think it can often encourage folks to go that 1 or 2 extra times. I know I like to get my money's worth when I invest in something like that. So that shows that they're coming out at least 1 round ahead.
Correct.
In most cases.
So for a round of 18 without the discount, what's the cost to play typical?
Yeah, without a discount card, it is 48. Yes, 48 without the discount card.
Okay. So it's really not extreme.
Yeah, so well, they're saving $10.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Next slide. Well, my next slide shows revenue and expense projection highlights. So the golf fund started this year with 2.5 million in fund balance. The projected ending fund balance this year is nearly 2.8 million. This is more than forecasted as rounds surpassed expectations. Rounds played this year are expected to be the highest yet, projected at 110,000 rounds. The revenue forecast for the next 6-year period is based off these 110 rounds. The average rate rounds played for the last 3 years is 106,000 rounds. While weather plays a big role in rounds played, the growth of our community with more people moving in, along with just the surge in demand for the sport, has benefited our bottom line. Green fees were increased $3 to $5 in 2024, along with the rate structure modification. Overall, feedback has been very positive. Looking at the 2025 budget, operating expenses are projected to increase about 4% compared to 2024. Increased rounds coupled with our rate structure modification and fee increase this year, revenue is forecasted to cover operating costs and capital improvement costs for 2025 without a rate increase being necessary. 2025 is projected to add 499,000 to fund balance. Based on this strong forecast, again, a rate increase is not warranted. The next few years indicate additional contributions to fund balance, the strategy being to add to fund balance to prepare for future years' capital improvements. The capital spending model shows use of fund balance in 29 and 2030 to fund more costly capital improvements. Each year, the projection will be revised and revisited, and we are continually looking ahead with the goal of self-supporting operations. Next slide, please.
You had a question.
Oh.
So of the total capacity for the golf courses, how much of the capacity are we consuming with the, I mean, is somebody gotta wait 2 weeks to get a tee time, or is tee times fairly available, or give me some kind of feel for how much
Well, weekends are certainly getting booked up, at least a week in advance for those prime slots. Folks are
Okay.
needing to plan ahead a little bit. Usually the courses are pretty good. You know, we've got 3, so if one doesn't have availability, we can look at the other, and usually
Right.
there is some wiggle room to get someone in. But those folks that are waiting until the last day to book, they're often out of luck, unfortunately, unless we have a cancellation, because we are seeing our tee sheets getting pretty packed up. So folks are encouraged to book at least a week in advance, maybe 2 weeks if they're looking for that weekend prime time play.
or they could always go play a city course if they had to.
I think they're encountering the same issues.
Are they?
Yes,
They're doing very well.
rounds are up all over the county.
Yeah.
Including the city courses.
They've had a record year as well.
Good. Okay. Thank you.
So moving on to the rate survey, there's 3 pages in your materials that show the weekday, weekend, and multi-play rate. Prior to proposing 2025 rates, golf courses in the area were surveyed. Most courses do not have their 2025 rates available yet. Several indicated that the rates may go up a few dollars. The city of Spokane has not officially released their 2025 rates, but indicated on the phone there will be no rate increase for 2025. In most cases, the county is below average, indicating our proposed 2025 rates with no rate increase over 2024 are very competitive. The total average indicates we are about 17% below market. This figure is mainly driven by comparison to the city courses, where they are about $4 higher than us. Based on the rate survey, the final handout is your copy of the 2025 rate markup, again indicating no rate increase. Our Golf Advisory Committee met on October 29th to review and discuss the proposed 2025 rates and voted unanimously to forward a recommendation in support of the proposed rate schedule. Again, these proposed rates are projected to cover operating expenses and contribute towards equipment needs and capital improvements, while continuing to be competitive within our market and a great value for the product we deliver. Next slide. Thank you for your time today.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
All right, we're gonna roll in to park user fees, and Rachel has a great overview. And I think we have a short presentation for the park user fees that Ron may be able to pull up.
All right, well, thank you for your time. In this session, we'll be discussing the proposed 2025 Parks and Recreation Facility Use and Program Fee Schedule. Please feel free to follow along using Exhibit A, track changes. To provide some context, Spokane County Parks, Recreation and Golf is committed to offering accessible recreational opportunities through the implementation of reasonable user fees. These fees are designed to reduce reliance on the general fund while ensuring sustainability. Our approach involves an annual review of the user fees and policies with a focus on clearly monitoring and assessing the costs associated with service delivery. This process includes conducting a comparative market analysis of similar services, rental rates, and participant fees offered by other service providers within our region. The goal in this review is to establish fees that are both fair and reasonable, balancing the need to offset operational expenses with the goal of maintaining accessible recreation opportunities for all. As proposed, the 2025 fee schedule will include the following adjustments in comparison to the existing 2024 fees for consideration. The first item is team sideline. Beginning January 1st, 2025, a non-refundable credit card processing fee will be applied to the registration platform we utilize for program registration such as swim lessons, Red Cross courses, and volleyball programs. The fee, which is currently 2.95% plus 30 cents per credit debit transaction, will be charged to customers during online checkout. This fee is applied by our point of sale software vendor, Team Sideline. Please note that cash and check will still be accepted at the Parks Recreation and Golf Office with no processing fee required for those payment methods. Aquatics facilities. And if we'd like to follow along with the fee schedule on the presentation, we can.
Just
Okay.
sit through it.
Okay, aquatics facilities. A nominal increase of $5 is proposed for swim team program registration. No other increase is proposed. Swim lessons and facility fees will remain the same fee. Camp Carroll Lodge, a 2025 rate increase is proposed for the initial day rental of both Camp Carroll Lodge and the Lodge Plus Lawn rental. Additionally, a $10 increase is proposed for each consecutive day rental. Field and court rentals. Language added to the section to more clearly define the director's authority to determine usage rates, which include rental application fee, rescheduling fee, and the amenity of lighting at Prairie View and Bidwell Park. Liberty Lake Regional Park. We are proposing a change to the entry fee model at Liberty Lake Regional Park. As long anticipated improvements to the park are nearing completion, including the renovation of the main parking lot from gravel to asphalt with clearly striped parking stalls, we are recommending shifting from the current per person entry fee of $2 for individuals 6 and older to a flat daily parking fee of $10. This new structure will simplify the fee system and align more closely with the other unique attractive destinations that attract the public in droves. Free parking will still be available for hikers in the equestrian and hiking lot located north of the main park entrance and newly improved area. This change is designed to enhance operational efficiency and provide a more consistent experience for park users. In light of this shift, additional adjustments have been incorporated into the 2025 fee schedule, which we will outline further. The Family Season Pass. We will be changing the name Family Season Pass to Vehicle Season Pass, and it will come with a $5 increase, raising the fee from $65 to $70. A Vehicle Season Pass change or replacement fee. A new $30 fee will be introduced for changing the vehicle identification or replacing a vehicle's season pass. K-12 student group parking. The name K-12 student group will be updated to K-12 student bus parking. The elimination of individual and group entry fees. All individual and group entry fee rates will be deleted from the fee schedule. Special event group parking fee. The entry fee for special events will be changed to a special event group parking fee. This optional add-on will allow special events and shelter reservations at Liberty Lake Regional Park to reserve a limited parking area, which is about 25 spots, in a small dirt grass overflow lot for $250 at the rate equivalent to the $10 per vehicle daily parking fee. Camping rates. A rate increase of $1 to $2 per night for camping is proposed in alignment with regional market comparisons. Additionally, the introduction of the new deluxe ADA cabin with fee. This new cabin will come with a daily season rate and holiday rate with 2-night minimum stay on holidays. This holiday rate is based on market research and comparable offerings in the region. The camping fee adjustments aim to keep fees aligned with camping market trends while improving the overall user experience at the park. Shelter rentals. No changes are proposed for the neighborhood shelter rental fees. However, as part of the transition to a flat vehicle parking fee at Liberty Lake Regional Park, we propose in reducing or eliminating the significantly higher shelter rental rates that were previously in place at the Liberty Lake location. The new rates will align with those on of other shelter rentals throughout our park system. This adjustment reflects an $85 decrease on weekends and a $110 decrease on weekends for shelter rentals at Liberty Lake Regional Park. The introduction of the flat rate per vehicle parking fee is expected to offset this reduction, ensuring that overall revenue remains consistent. Special event permit, no fees are proposed in this section. And then fee schedule policies. We have added language to clarify that credit card transaction processing fee that is required by our point of sale software vendor Team Sideline. That it's a non-refundable credit card processing fee of 2.95% plus 30 cents per debit or credit transaction will be applied by the software vendor. This fee will be charged to the customer during online checkout for programs such as swim lessons, Red Cross courses, and volleyball programs. Again, cash and check is accepted at the office with no fee. Thank you for your time. This concludes our presentation of all proposed changes to the 2025 fee schedule. If approved, the adjusted facility use fees will enable Spokane County Parks and Recreation and Golf to continue providing essential services to the community. Services that would otherwise be difficult to sustain without a greater negative impact to the general fund. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to address them now.
Couple questions for you. On slide 8, where you talk about the different rates for cabins,
Yes.
say includes parking for 2 motor vehicles. So I don't know what kind of vehicles don't have a motor. So I'm confused by what the intent is, but are you saying that an RV is going to be considered the same as a motorcycle? Both of them have a motor, but in terms of size and or a small, ATV or anything like that. So is there any differentiation with regard to size?
Right.
And type of vehicle?
It's referring to the vehicle. It's referring to the vehicle. The spaces are so limited. They don't have enough parking for more than two vehicles. And so it's a motor vehicle is what we've been going off of. Some people will drive in with a motorcycle and a car and park a tent, but you're talking specifically cabins. Well, it's just 2 vehicles, motor vehicles for the parking space that each site allows.
We don't discount for motorcycles.
What's that?
It said we don't have a different rate for motorcycles, and I think you're thinking 4 might fit in the scope of one large.
So
vehicle.
I'll give you an example. Somebody
Yeah.
shows up with a truck and a trailer and behind it, and they've got 4 ATVs on the trailer. We're gonna charge them for 5 vehicles?
No, if it's in their vehicle, no, it would just,
Sitting on the trailer.
sitting on the trailer, it should be fine, yeah.
And we do have
Yeah.
folks that do that and
Yes.
utilize the ORV
All
park
the
up
time.
there.
Yeah.
So
That's kind of where it's going.
Yes, there's no additional,
Yeah.
no,
Okay,
no, it's just for what 2 vehicles will fit in that parking space.
Okay.
And so if it's on their trailer, it should be fine within their RV, yeah.
And then I think the other thing is that if you have more than, say, 2 cars, there's then that $10 per car parking kicks in and we have overflow parking in the main lot. And we sometimes do have folks that will have a lot of extra guests that may drive their own vehicles and end up utilizing the parking in the main lot on occasion, on busy weekends, that type of thing.
so, I'm not trying to be problematic here. I'm just trying to anticipate what could be encountered. So, so during the summer months, I travel with the motorcycle group. There's 12 bikes in the group. So we show up here, we're gonna camp out one night. And so am I gonna be paying for 12 vehicles? Cause I've got 12 motorcycles, or I'm gonna be paying for 2 motorcycles, or what am I gonna be paying for?
So first off, the camping fees are just the fees. If you make a reservation for the campground, you're not paying an entrance fee of $10.
Right.
So your camping fee includes your
Parking.
admission for 2 vehicles, right?
Okay.
If you're looking at that specific cabin. Any vehicles greater than that, it can only hold 2 on a site. So if you do a group tent site, then you would go off of how many are allowed in a group tent site, and anything above the numbers per site that are listed in here would be an additional $10 fee. It would be.
Right.
But
Any other questions?
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Right, yeah, and our next step, if we're on track, is we'll work to have this before you, both of these resolutions before you, so allow these to be implemented for effective 2025. And I think we're looking at your first meeting in December to have that on the legislative agenda.
Just one clarification, you said what's the current fee structure for Lippy Lake parking?
Entrance, yeah, it's a per person, $2 per
Entry fee
person,
versus.
right?
Okay,
Parking
thank you.
fee.
So we think this change will really simplify it and be much more consistent with similar facilities in the area and of course, the comparison research that was done.
People won't be kind of laying down in their chair as they go. through,
Right.
Not here, in the car.
It takes me back to the sixties where we had 20 students in a Volkswagen bus.
Everybody down, down.
Sure, you bet.
For a drive-in movie theater.
For a drive-in movie theater, there you go, yes.
Something I thought was interesting is that fee hasn't changed in 27 years. You brought that. No. Yeah.
So you're saying the $10 fee will last that long?
Yeah.
No, it's possible, but I'm guessing there may be adjustments a little more. Yeah, we'll see. We'll do that comparison every year.
Okay,
Time will tell.
fair enough.
And we'll try to remain competitive for sure. Yeah, thank you very much for your time.
All right. Jim Amacio,
Thank you very much.
the one, the only,
Yeah.
the Jim Amacio.
So, this is a follow-up, board members, to the meeting we had a couple of weeks ago. We were considering amending the open public forum and the rules of decorum. And so I presented you with a handout. And I'm going to give you this, I'm going to have Matt, if you would hand this out, because I want to remind the board what you told me to do. And then as a result of this particular handout, I took the open public forum rules that we presently have. And I took the rules of decorum that are posted in the hearing room, and I tracked some changes, so there's no misunderstanding. I'm gonna have Matt, if I could, pass out the second document, because this document, I tracked the changes, underlined and lined out, so you can see the changes I made based upon the document you have in front of you. Frankly, board members, you made very few changes. You asked me to look at a couple of things, and I've responded to those. So before we start going over the document that you have in red in front of you where you made your decisions, I'd like you to look at the document that I presently handed out. The document I presently handed out, which is that one, that's correct, Commissioner French, that's correct. That has all the changes that you asked me to make in your open public forum and your rules of decorum. I've lined them out and underlined so there's no misunderstanding of what you asked me to do. If I could have you, firstly, I'd like to address two questions that came up. And if you go to the third page of the document, board members, which is the last page, I had two questions which I was asked. The first question was asked by Commissioner French, and at the bottom of the page, after the asterisks, Commissioner French said, isn't there an RCW that basically says you should not be threatening the Board of County Commissioners, if you will, and so on and so forth. And so, Commissioner French, I referenced the RCW that you alluded to. I have not included it in the open public forum document. I've just referenced it so you know what the law is. The second question that I was asked by the board members, and Commissioner Walder, if this was your question, you said, Mr. Amacio, would you please provide us with a copy of the present language in the Open Public Meetings Act that addresses what happens when you have an unruly group of people there? And so I have copied the particular RCW. With respect to this particular issue, board members, if you go to page 3 of 5 of the handout I gave you in red, 3 of 5 in the handout I gave you with the red comments. The last time we talked about this particular item, board members, under item number 5, the question was, what, if anything, we do with someone who speaks beyond 3 minutes or gets unruly? And if you look at page 3 of 5 in the handout, of course, I've indicated what happens in the first column is under the county rules. Do we address it? We don't. In the second column, I address what happens in the city of Spokane. At the present time, they don't address it. And in the third column, I put what the city of Spokane does. And as a result of this, of course, the board did not give me any direction on this issue. They just said, Mr. Amacio, Mr. Walter said, please let us know what the present RCW is. And so that's what I've given you on the handout today as to what happens under the present Open Public Meetings Act if you have a disruly group of people. And if you have a disruly group of people, the chairperson of the board with a majority vote of the board can clear the room and continue the meeting to another location, or clear the room and terminate the meeting. And if you have a disruly group of people and you clear the room and move it to a new location, the people available at that new location can include anyone who wasn't disruly, if you will, plus members of the press. So that's the way the present law reads in the event you have a disruly meeting of some sort. So again, and I'm looking at the board members here, to the best of my recollection, Commissioner French, you've been here probably the longest of any board member. I do not recall board, maybe in one instance, Commissioner French having a disruly group of people, so we had to terminate the meeting.
We didn't have to terminate the meeting, but we did take a recess and I think, I'm going from memory, I think we asked the sheriff to send over a deputy. And so then we allowed for a deputy to be present in the meeting, just so that there was some authority figure other than the board. So, but I can only remember doing that once.
And so board members, again, the last time we met to discuss the open public forum language in the county code, you gave me no direction on that particular issue. Commissioner French said, isn't there an RCW dealing with threatening people? And Commissioner Walter said, Mr. Macio, please give us the RCW under the OPMA. And you see the unique language that the city of Spokane Valley has in the handout that I gave you the last time on the third column on page, I think it's 3 of 5. They have a very specific process that they use. And of course, the question for the county commissioners is, do you want to do anything right now? All I've done so far, board members, and that's what I'd like to address now, is I'd like to go into the second handout I gave you. This shows the changes I made from the last time we met. And these are the only changes I made based upon the direction from the board. I did not take the liberty of making any changes because these are county commissioners' rules and regulations. One thing I did do, Commissioner French, is you'll notice we used to have what are called rules of conduct. And board members, I took the liberty of changing them to rules of decorum because that's what normally they call them throughout the other jurisdictions. The other thing I did, board members, is I made the rules of decorum a part of the county code. Presently, they're not part of the county code. They're simply a resolution posted in the room. So I made them a part of the county code, and you'll see, if you look at the handout, you'll see exactly the changes I've made to those rules of decorum, consistent with your direction from last week. So I'm here, I'm looking at the board members and to see if you have any questions about the underlying changes that I've made or the lined out changes. Now, Commissioner Waldrop, on page 1 of the handout, under item number 3, you said, Mr. Amacio, isn't there a better word for political campaigning? And so if you look at the first page of the document that shows all the changes, at the bottom of it, I changed the language of political campaigning to election or campaign related topics, because that seemed to be a little bit better language than just, if you will, political campaigning.
Maybe, I don't know if I appreciate you doing that.
But you raised the question.
Yeah.
And so.
Well, I just thought, yeah, I don't know if it's like maybe saying if something's on a ballot. I don't know how specific or political or if an item is on the ballot. I don't know if that's a better way of saying it, but
Yeah, I don't
it's
know.
tough. I
know.
don't really know the perfect wording.
Yeah, I actually think political campaigning is probably better than the election or campaign related topics. I mean, because somebody could come to talk about a legal issue, some sort of, or something, I mean, if they're talking about an election topic, they could be coming and talking about their experience as an election observer, or they watched a recount and they want to talk to us about their experience watching a recount or an election, watching the ballots being counted. That could clearly be, that's an election topic, but it wouldn't be political campaigning. So, I mean, I actually think the political campaigning probably, I think is more what we don't want people to go up and say, vote for this. I'm here to speak to you five, and this is why I'm voting this way and encouraging the public to vote for this or vote again. I think that's what we want to stay away from. But I mean, somebody could definitely talk about an election topic, the elections as a whole kind of thing. Or, we could have someone come and complain that, my signature was declined, a mismatch, and, it is my signature, so they're not telling someone how to vote or anything. So I don't know what the
Yeah, I
best way
think
to
that's too
wordsmith
broad,
that is. I
yeah.
think election topic, I think is probably too broad.
The best of my recollection of Chair, Mr. Kearns, we have never had this issue raised, to the best of my recollection, in any public hearing since we adopted our open public forum language. Now, Commissioner French, I don't remember the chair or the vice chair having to say, I'm sorry, you can't speak to that item because it's not a proper subject of the open public forum. I don't recall that, but Commissioner French, maybe your memory is better than mine.
I can't recall that we ever admonished anybody for that, but we have had people show up with buttons and hats and shirts and stuff and
Could be
ask them
political
to
campaign.
leave
Okay, yeah.
or take their shirts off. So no, no.
But again, that's lawful as a First Amendment issue that we talked about before. That's right.
Which is
Well,
a whole
I'm
different
fine,
kind of
I'm
meeting.
fine with putting back political
Very
campaigning.
different
I was
deal.
just trying to,
So
political campaigning could be broadly interpreted, but it's, that's gonna be at the discretion of the chair, I guess.
there's another way to address this, and that's to say that you can only comment on items that are on the agenda.
Well, we actually tell them this is for items not on the agenda.
Which, is a disconnect in
Yeah.
terms of, how we administer the meetings and stuff. But if you were, and I sit on a couple other boards that's actually actively talking about doing this because they being subjected to folks showing up and wanting to talk about the way the world rotates and nothing about the business before the board and stuff. And so that would be another way. That way you can control what's on the agenda, and then quite frankly, we vote on a lot of things that the people don't have an opportunity to talk about. So if we gave them an opportunity to talk about the things that are on the agenda without constituting a public hearing, which is the other part of it, then, is that a way to kind of control the nature of the dialogue?
Well, food for thought, board members. If you go to the original handout that I gave you the first time that has the red marks on it, on page 1 of 5, I actually quoted what the other ordinance said as to what could be discussed. And the last time we met on this, Commissioner Waldron said, Mr. Amacio, please eliminate no person shall orally initiate charges or complaints against any individual or county employees at a public meeting of the board. I eliminated that language. That's what you told me to do. And so you can see, the board didn't give me any further direction, except Commissioner Walter said, and Mr. Maciel, check on the language political campaign. That's what you were, I handed this out because sometimes our memories aren't good as to what you said, and you might say, why did you do this, Mr. Maciel?
Well, I think we all had a discussion about whether or not we could control this idea of charges or complaints.
Yep.
We had a dialogue
Yeah, you did.
amongst all of us
Yeah.
about whether that was something
Yes.
we wanted to keep in or leave out, and I can't remember.
Yeah. Well,
So my memory is not good.
these notes I took, it said eliminate the language in red is what you told me. So that was a consensus by the board. Eliminate the language in red, which I did on this chart. And then I brought it back to the board for your action.
Yeah, go ahead, go.
I don't remember eliminating that. I thought we wanted to keep that in because basically by Robert's rules, you cannot attack an individual. You have to talk about issues. And so if we're going to follow Robert's rules, this is, you can't attack individuals personally or complaints or anything like that. You have to talk about an issue and stuff. So I thought we were going to leave that in, but
I can check with the clerk. After the meeting, I dictated in red what you told me because memories aren't good. And I want to be sure they're misunderstanding. And so I'm glad to put it back in, but my recollection was eliminated. That's why I did this because my memories aren't good sometimes.
well, I could be remembering it wrong too,
We
but I
can-
just,
yeah.
I mean, that's a foundational element of Robert's rules is you talk about issues, you don't talk about people. And you address all your comments to the chair.
I can add it back in if that's the board's direction.
I don't know, I can remember there was one instance, it happened multiple times, it was the same individual, this was probably 2017, 2018. There was an individual who came multiple times in that time frame, would complain about sort of a drainage issue that he was putting the blame on a specific individual by name in Public Works. And it was an individual that, I mean, the person even said like, this has been a problem since this date. And that predated that individual in Public Works time of even working for the county. But he would come, he would use the person by name, would put blame on them for this drainage problem. And I remember there, I think you were chair and you gavelled him down a few times and said, no, you cannot, you cannot do this, you cannot assert these allegations or accusations against this individual by name. You know, you can state your problem, your concern with Public Works, but do not name one single individual in your complaint. And you know, and that fixed the problem. The guy would, you know, but he'd come back the next week and do the exact same thing. So, but yeah.
And I think we've had some in the scraps realm recently.
Good point, yes. good
So
point.
I think I was the one who was most concerned about that language, just because I think, you know, it weighs more on the free speech end for me. But it was pointed out that we are officers of the county, not necessarily employees. So even under our current rules, someone would be able to come and say, Jordan, you're an idiot, you voted this way, you should have voted that way, which I think they should be able to say if they want to. But maybe if it's still protecting specific county employees, then they can still make a complaint against a department of the county and that kind of thing. So I'm good with leaving it as it is currently in the code. As to this piece.
Oh,
So
actually,
putting this back in.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's consistent, that's consistent with Robert's rules. So
That's fine. I'm more than happy to add that back into the rules of decorum as the board wants. And as Mr. Wallace said, I will put back in the language that we just got through talking about with regard to the political issues. And does the board have any other concerns
Ash-
about the?
Ashley has something to say.
Yes,
Yeah, so I'm just gonna, thank you, Commissioner Jordan, for pointing that out, because the one thing I wanted to make sure that we were including is we, as a Washington employer, are still responsible for any workplace violence against our employees. And so we do still need to ensure that we are, helping to eliminate like verbal abuse, threats, assault, things like that. So I appreciate what you said, and that was actually gonna be my recommendation, is maybe the language differentiates between an officer and an employee, so that we can still have some language of protection for our employees against any sort of threats or discriminatory comments that may arise in a public meeting. So just another angle to look at for this, depending on how you want this written.
So just as we go down our list here, so time, I think we're all good, 3 minutes. 3 minutes, unless the chair adjusts that. Allocating time, I think we had agreed we did not want allocation of time. You couldn't bundle your time and give them to one person. Matters discussed. I mean, are we good there? Are we good on that? Probably going back to the language of political campaigning as opposed to, I've missed it.
yes, we're gonna add in, no person shall orally initiate
Yeah.
charges. I eliminated that, board members, and
Okay.
I'm gonna leave in the terminology that I changed from political campaigning to election or campaign related topics. We're gonna leave in political campaigning, Commissioner.
I think we're good there. Any other changes for that section? Anyone?
No.
I think we're good. Okay, so total time allocated for open forum. So I see in red here, it says all agreed on 15 minutes maximum unless extended by the chair or majority of the board, which I think we're good. Okay,
You made very few changes, Vice Chair Kearns, after we dialogued on it quite a while.
okay, so I think we're good on that section.
Yeah, I'd prefer it to be longer, but I think we've already discussed it and it's clear that it should stay 15 based on the.
And in the last couple of weeks, we've had 2 or 3 people be in, we've just said, okay, you know what, everybody gets, we're just taking care of it,
The
so.
language still allows for flexibility.
Oh, yeah,
Right.
yep, or, yep. Time unless extended by the chair or majority of the board.
Okay.
Yep.
Yes.
The election's over too, and that'll affect us too.
Penalty for violating the time, so what do we do there, just so we're all clear? Cause that's the final section here.
We
One
have,
week.
there's nothing in our present OPMA that addresses that. We're left with the language in the RCW, which is on page 3, if you will, of the
other side.
the handout that I gave you. I just quoted it directly, board members.
Just a thought.
Yep.
What if we just put something in our code that basically adopts or parrots what the RCW already says, just so it's clearly laid out in the code that may happen if there's a disturbance.
And so as I'm looking here, I'm fine with that. My question was, Jim, so do you think, does this RCW 4230-050, is that pretty close to what the Valley has laid out in their A through D here?
No, it is not.
No, it's not, okay.
The city of Valley has very unique language. It actually requires the clerk of the valley to do certain things and then for the attorney to do certain things. And I'm not sure that that's necessarily a good idea, but again, that's my view. But ours, no, the RCW is substantially different.
Okay.
And
Yes, I mean, as I'm just quickly reading through this RCW, I mean, I think this covers what we need. If the meeting is interrupted, orderly conduct of such meeting unfeasible, I mean, we're able to,
the interesting thing about the
we can
OPMA.
clear it, continue the session, or may adjourn the meeting if
Yes.
need, I mean,
Yeah.
it kind of gives us the flexibility we need as
Yeah.
I look at it.
And board members, from a legal perspective, you don't need to put that in our language because it's already in the OPMA legislation. I certainly can add a section that says violations and reference that RCW if that's the board's desire.
I mean, you could refer to our rules of decorum.
Yes.
You could say, if anyone is in violation of the rules of decorum, then we'll be following the processes outlined in this RCW.
Yes.
Yeah, go for it.
So what in the RCW, what are the parameters for addressing an individual that is disruptive to a meeting? Is there any language that talks about, they cannot or participate in open forum for 30 days or whatever? Is there any repercussion for the bad activity that would be an encouragement not to engage in that?
Well, Commissioner French, you raise a good question, and if you look at 4230-0050, which I've referenced, it deals with usually groups of people that there's a problem with. But at the end of that RCW, there's unique language, and it says, nothing in this section prohibits the governing body from stopping people from speaking to the governing body when not recognized by the governing body to speak. So arguably, I know that's what it says, but it doesn't say how you implement it. So for instance, Commissioner French, someone's up there and they speak for more than 3 minutes. Right now, it works pretty well because we have music comes on and we have a clock. So I don't know if that's been an issue. But to answer your question, the OPMA talks in terms of groups of people causing a problem as opposed to one individual, Commissioner French.
So if you have an individual that shows up for, let's say, 2 meetings in a row and becomes, verbally abusive or disruptive to the meeting or whatever, and you can engage in this kind of activity to try and address the issue, but there's no repercussion. I made this comment before. Rules without consequences are just suggestions and stuff. So what is the consequence of bad behavior?
Well, Commissioner French, this issue was addressed by the city council some time ago, and what they did is they had somebody coming again and again and again. And so they adopted, as I recall, at least that's what I learned from talking with city representatives, a policy that said they couldn't come back and speak for like 60 or 90 days. They ended up pulling that policy back. They decided it was not a good policy. I haven't looked at the First Amendment rights in that regard, Commissioner French. So I don't know that I can answer it any more than that.
Well, I think that their rule was because they had individuals that were showing up every single meeting, and it was crowding out conversation for new participants. So they wanted to create a window so that everybody would have access to be able to provide testimony to the council. That's a matter of managing the speakers. What I'm talking about is if you have a speaker that comes and is consistently habitually abusive, and there's no way to deal with that, then there's no way to discourage that kind of activity.
Well, and I think we all need to remind ourselves, Commissioner French, that when we have an open public forum, it's a limited public forum. And yes, you do have the right to condition the circumstances under which people can speak, but we can't discriminate against people on what they're saying. Time, place, and manner restrictions. So, Commissioner French, the only thing I can is, again, go back to what the City of the Valley's done, because theirs really addresses the individual doing the kinds of things you're talking about, Commissioner French. And again, it's pretty prescriptive. I'm not sure you want to do that. And Commissioner French, I guess the question is for the board members, if the wheel isn't broken, why fix it? And so I ask you that question, board members. If you want me to further explore that issue, I will.
If leave it alone until it becomes a problem.
And then I guess, so as I look at the 3-page document, you struck number 6, which was the no person shall orally initiate charges or complaints against an individual county employee. So do we
I'll
need
add that
to,
back.
some sort of, I mean, and if you think there's a different way to word that, or do you think that exact language fits, or do you think it needs wordsmithed a little bit to get to the same outcome that we've discussed?
I think your human resource director suggested the word employee is different than maybe an elected official. That's what I'm hearing, and I thought I heard everyone say, I'm looking at, it's all right to pick on an elected official, but not the employee. I think that's what I'm hearing. And so I might add some language there. For purpose of this, the word county employee does not include a county elected official. And I'm sensitive to all these words, board members. That's why I'm looking around.
We trust you to wordsmith that and get to, I think you understand what we're looking for,
Yes,
so
yes.
however you need to wordsmith that, we'll
I
we
think
trust you.
that's kind of, yeah, I think that the confusion was that we were talking about, if I remember Commissioner Jordan, you were saying, well, they should be able to express concerns
Frustration.
or, you know, congratulations, right? And good things to say about
Yeah,
their,
because Susie
about their
still
elected
shows
officials.
up.
But that shouldn't be targeting specific
Yeah.
county employee staff, yeah.
Okay.
Question, Commissioner French, you mentioned the people can't speak on something that's on the agenda for the day.
That's just one suggestion. Is
Yeah.
one way of dealing with it and stuff, because otherwise, how do they provide input on items that are on the agenda?
Is that something you want to look at revisiting?
I bring it up only because of, like I say, I said on a couple of the boards, and we are doing that. We are going to limit public comment to just the agenda, because otherwise your agenda becomes consumed with items that you are not dealing with. And so we want to be very specific about the mission and direction of the board or commission and stuff. So that's the only reason I brought it up, is we are doing that on 3 other boards that I said on.
What's the reason that we limit
What-
testimony to things that are not on the consent agenda for?
It's been like that ever since I've been here.
I
but
just find it to be.
But I think one of the issues is because you don't want someone using open public forum in place of public hearing items. You want people to wait until we get to a public hearing. But then again, those that are on our consent agenda, if those are by resolution, I mean, essentially, we wanted people to get to us before, 2 minutes before we're gonna cast the vote on those, we're not holding a public hearing for anything that's by resolution on our consent agenda. So that's why we ask, submit those or, reach out to the commissioners ahead of time. That way, we're not pulling things off, changing, making amendment. I mean, essentially, we want that information before we get into that room. I think that's always those are my thoughts on why we always, but it's always been that way since I've been here.
Yeah, the other reason is because if the item has been discussed and worked with staff and the legislative body to get to be on the consent agenda, then a lot of those things have already been vetted. And then if somebody from the outside comes in and comments and starts to raise issues that were not addressed or were not considered as part of that, then it creates a challenge. Do you go back and restart all over again? It defeats the idea of a consent agenda. So that was the other reason why, you just.
The legislature, when they said the board could not take final action on any item in a regular meeting without oral or written comments, really created a limited public forum for those items, because now, Commissioner French, even though it's on the consent agenda, you submit written comments before noon on the day before, or if it's added by leave, the public has the right for oral comments. So the legislature created a limited public forum before you take a final action. And now we have the open public forum, which is kind of subject, it is a limited public forum too, but we're creating our own guidelines.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at the board members. I want to be sure my notes are reflective. I'm not gonna make any changes to matters discussed. I'm gonna leave it like it is. I haven't heard the board say, make changes, and I'm real sensitive to all this stuff because it's so critical.
I mean, I think if we say it's only things on our agenda, then I mean, essentially they have to wait until a day where there's, the topic is on our agenda. I mean, they may want to come and say, there's a road in my, I mean, we've had people come and say, there's a road, you know, in my neighborhood that needs addressed and I'm not getting it's not getting the attention that it needs. I mean, and they come and they present that to it, but that road isn't on our consent agenda that day, or someone comes and says, hey, this is an important issue. I think, you know, perfect example. Becky, who comes and talks about 1590. That's not on our consent agenda, but she comes and asks us to implement that. I mean, so, you know, we know what she's gonna say, but she should have the right to come and continue to say, hey, I want you guys to do this, so.
Yeah, and I'm not suggesting that we restrict open public forum only to items on. I'm asking the question whether we want to eliminate the restriction that says you cannot testify or speak in open public forum to anything on the consent agenda. So if there was someone who had something they wanted to share about something we're about to vote on, they could still do that. We could make the choice of whether to react or not. That's what I'm just asking the question. So I just don't, you know, someone might have information that we're not aware of that could cause a delay of an item that was on the consent agenda or not, just a thought.
Well, but they do, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Could I add real quick and then?
Sure.
It just seems to me that we post our agendas on Friday publicly, usually towards the end of the day. And then really a member of the public has till Monday at noon to send in a written comment. That's not very much time. I understand most things are briefed ahead of time. Not all the time. Sometimes we have a by leave item. So just a thought.
Yeah,
Sorry,
well,
go ahead.
well, and we have extended the amount of time that the public has the agenda available to it with all the documentation associated with it. So that information now is there long before we take an action and stuff. So yeah.
Vice Chairman Kearns, do I get any direction on that item from the board? Leave it like I'm hearing. I'm gonna leave it like it is unless I hear more.
That's fine.
Like this.
I'm looking at the board members. That's my intent. And so Commissioner Kearns, what I intend to do now is take the document that I've given you, a lined out and underlined version, put back in some of the things I've taken out, the one section, make a reference that I can still criticize elected officials, if you will. I'm just summarizing. Put in the language that I changed, Mr. Walter, trying to address your concern. And then the next step would be, board members, for me to, this would be subject to a public hearing. And so that would be 10 days notice, because that's what we did with regard to adopting the changes on the OPMA when we originally adopted those. So I'll prepare a notice of public hearing for this. I will not brief the board again. I'll just place it on the agenda with the changes I've suggested. Are we all right with that?
Are you gonna add, did we agree to add the, if there's a violation of the decorum, we will follow the procedures of the interruption statute?
I apologize, Commissioner Jordan. I will do that. And what I will do is I'll mail it out. I'll mail the final changes to the board and ask the board to be sure I've encompassed it, so I don't have to come back for another meeting, if that is acceptable, board member. Is that all right, Mr. Vice Chair?
Everybody good?
Yeah.
Yep.
Good.
Okay. Thank you very much for going this tedious process. It's important, though. Thank you, board members. That's all I have on this topic.
Okay, all right. We're gonna jumble up our schedule just a little bit because one of our guests is here. We're just a little bit behind. So We're gonna bring in Kira Bauer from Little Scholars Development Center LLC. She's gonna talk about the year-end report. Hello,
Morning, everyone.
let's welcome. Like you sent ahead a PowerPoint, so you can
did.
jump right in.
Fantastic. Hello, everyone. I am Kira Bauer. I am the owner of Little Scholars Development Center and the founder of Raise Development. I am here to talk to you this morning about the classroom mental health pilot program that has been running for just over a year. And just kind of give you our first of our final report of our first year. This is a program that is currently running in 3 childcare centers: Little Scholars, A Bright Beginning, and Parkview Early Learning Center. Currently, we have over 250 students who have access to this program and over 75 teachers and staff. The services that we provide are clinical counseling supports for teachers and students, clinical behavioral health services for students and their families, resource referral systems, university mentoring program, and training programs as well. And I'll go a little bit deeper into that. Next slide. I would like to introduce you to our behavioral or mental health and behavioral team. Dr. Irma Henry is that is really far away, our mental health clinician, and she works specifically with our teachers and staff. Wendy Haley Vasquez is our behavioral health therapist, and she works specifically with students and families. Lakeisha Ashley is our classroom manager, and she works on classroom safety and environment and teacher professional development. Andrea Holman is our program float, and she ensures that teachers are able to be paid for the services that we provide by entering their classrooms so that they can step out. Dr. Shakisha Comstick is our clinical director. She oversees the clinical supports of Dr. Irma Henry and Wendy Haley Vasquez, signing off on their program notes and their resource if they have questions. And I am Kira Bauer, the program. The way that this project works is that it is elevated and motivated by our teachers and our parents. They elevate concerns or challenges that their students or their classrooms or themselves, if they're the teacher, might be facing to our classroom, our mental health clinician or our behavioral health therapist. And that information is then taken in, observations are done, clinical assessments are completed, and then an implementation plan is put into practice. From there, we work with families. We ensure that we are being culturally relevant and using trauma-informed practices. We put these implementation plans together, and then we work with the teachers, the staff, and the families to ensure that they are implemented properly. Some of the key performance indicators that we're looking for are improvement in teacher satisfaction, retention, and self-perceived efficacy in managing behavioral health, reduction in the frequency and severity of extreme behaviors among students, and we'll talk about how that feeds into the preschool to prison pipeline in just a bit. Increase in the use of trauma-informed practices and positive behavior support strategies in the class. So one of the things that we really want to make sure that this program is doing is disrupting that preschool to prison pipeline. What we know is that there is about 1.7 million students in schools with some form of police activity, but no counselors. 3 million students in schools with, again, police or discipline, but no nurses, no psychiatrists, no social workers. And so we want to make sure that we are counterbalancing that. We know that for every dollar spent in early childhood education, there is at minimum a $7 return. We recently did a literature review that showed us that teacher stress has a direct impact on student outcomes. Teachers' emotional exhaustion was significantly and negatively related to students' mathematic achievements. high stress, high burnout, produce low coping skills and poor student outcomes. We also saw that teachers that reported high depression were also in some of the lowest ranked student achievement classes. I worked with Priority Spokane to put together a STEP training. And in this training, we had around 90 teachers who attended. And this was a training that took about 6 to 7 hours, and we really looked at stress and trauma and its effects on teachers, and really acknowledging some of the work that they were doing and the personal stress that they were under. At the end of that program, or at the end of that training that had been done over 1,000 times in the United States, we found that early childhood educators ranked the highest in stress and trauma. And that was even over the military personnel who conducted the Afghanistan evacuation that had taken the same training, where early learning professionals are in crisis, and thus our classroom. So what have we learned in our first year? First, we know that the teachers that we are serving were often referred to additional behavioral health supports, such as psychological testing, couples counseling, or 12-step meetings. Our teachers are dealing with social determinants of health needs, such as budgeting tools, food bank locations, diaper banks, so on and so forth. And some of the ICD-10 billable diagnosis codes that we are seeing are major depressive disorders, generalized anxiety, or even post-traumatic stress. 88% of the students who engage with this program remain in program, so they're not being suspended, they're not being expelled, which leads to that preschool to prison pipeline. And 58% of the teachers who engage in the program are staying. Child Care Aware just came out with numbers that says that early childhood educators are turning over at a minimum rate of 6 months, at a turnover of every 6 months. So the last time that I was here, one of the things that I reported to you is that this is about turning around a shipping ship, not a speedboat, right? Mental health is not, it's non-linear. So when we look at this summary and we're really looking at the improvement in teacher satisfaction and retention, what we want to see is that blue line going up and the red line going down. So the great news is that there is a decrease in the disagree responses that the teachers filled out. And this is a quarterly survey that we did. There was a decrease in the amount of disagree responses. And this reflects that there is a steady increase in workplace culture over the year. What we'd hope to see is that blue line consistently going up. But one of the things that I had reported is we found that it takes time to build trust with teachers. And so early on, everybody was 4s and 5s. And as the year progressed, as we built trust and people felt comfortable being honest, we did see that that went down to what we believe was more of a baseline and gave us something to begin with. So not what we wanted to see, but absolutely what we expected to see. A couple of staff testimonials. One of the things that I know in talking with our teachers is that this is a program that they rely on. This is a program that they look forward to having in their facilities. When our classroom managers, one of the teachers came up to me and she said, "One, your program inspired me to go out and find mental health supports for myself and my family. But also when the classroom managers walk in, it's a breath of fresh air because I know that I have support." So let's talk about what, now we know that the teachers are taking advantage of this program, but what is the effect on the children? Are we actually having and seeing an effect in the classroom? So in one of our centers, we saw between a 42 and a 66% reduction in incident and behavioral reports. And at a second center, we saw an overall decrease of about 19% in incident and behavior reports. And this can be anything from physical aggression to verbal aggression to eloping. 19%
in one center, 66 to 42% in another. Our third center experienced some flooding and other catastrophes, and so that really interrupted or disrupted their ability to report. And so we're looking forward to getting those full numbers from them year 2. So this program started with $319,000 that was invested by the county commissioners. We've also received $90,000 in staffing over a 3-year period from a grant from Launch Northwest. We'll talk a little bit about that work. $100,000 from the Perigee Fund, $14,000 from the Women Helping Women Fund, $30,000 from HSSA. One of the things that I can say is this is a community that is excited about this program and excited about the work that we are doing. We have several grants out currently that we have been invited to apply for and are waiting either in the application process or waiting to hear back from. Overall, we spent about $318,000, and that covers everything from payroll to the cost of the program, ongoing staffing benefits. I want to tell you the story of a little guy named Sakai. Sakai is a beautiful human being who is full of life. And Sakai was experiencing some severe challenges in the classroom, and the mental health team worked with him and put together an implementation plan, but it was soon understood that he was facing some challenges that were beyond our scope within the classroom. We went into a period of time for his safety and the safety of other students that we were not able to have him in the classroom. And I said to the mother, I said, I promise you this will not be the last time that we speak. I will find support in our community for your son. It took about 3-4 months for me to find that support, but I was able to find a one-on-one ABA therapy support for Sakai through an organization here in town. And it allowed him to be able to re-enter our preschool program and continue to prepare for kindergarten. Through these services, both Sakai and his mother became or continued to become just a huge part of our program and our organization. And he is now in school. And though he is facing challenges even in kindergarten, he is now getting through whole days without eloping and able to really take advantage of the education system that he so rightly deserves. So what we're looking at in year 2 is adding we've added a dedicated student behavioral health support by way of Wendy Haley Vasquez, who is our behavioral support specialist or therapist. We went from a BHT to a full therapist because I realized that from the work that we did, I realized that we needed more focus on our students, and not just the students and their behaviors, but the families as well, providing them coping skills and knowledge around their students' challenges. So we have a full behavioral health therapist who is now meeting with both students and providing therapy to families as well. We are proud to announce that we have one of the first data sharing agreements with Spokane Public Schools, which now gives my cohort the access to their kindergarten readiness numbers. And so we'll be able to start tracking that, which is historic. Some of the additional things that we are doing, we have recently partnered with Washington State University. Dr. Dooney is going to be in charge of our data analysis, and we'll be working with our team very closely to make sure that we have numbers that reflect the work that we are doing. We're also partnered with Launch Northwest through our Activate the Village program, where we will be providing in-house resources to our students and their families, with this idea that you should not have to leave outside of a childcare center to receive the resources that you need. And so those resources will now be indoors. And we'll also be doing work through that program with the rest of childcare centers in Spokane County as well. What does sustainability look like for this program? First and foremost, we are actively seeking a behavioral health agency pathway and working with 2 organizations here in town to bring us under their umbrella so that we can start billing Medicaid and insurance in general for the services that we provide. I recently became a Washington State peer counselor. And so we are going to be working that program as well so that our non-clinical supports can also be billed. And we'll be offering that counseling certification to the entirety of our mental health team so that even our non-clinical supports can be billed. And that billing will be able to start in 2025. We're also seeking a dedicated budget allocation from the 0.1% funding through the county. And then we will continue to apply for grant opportunities that I mentioned earlier. And this is just a breakdown of what the 25-26 budget looked like. It includes expenses for the mental health clinician, the behavioral health therapist, our classroom management specialist, project float, of course, payroll tax and all the benefits that come along with having lovely staff, project manager, the clinical director, the program director, supplies, and then just the overall totals there. Overall, this project with the group that and this is even adding in, there is a 4th center that has reached out and asked for support, and we will begin onboarding this week. Overall, this project is about $1,350 per person. And that is for mental and behavioral health support for students, families, teachers, and staff. And it's really a holistic way of meeting the need for our students and our families. That is the child care mental health in our first year.
Does anybody have any questions?
Go ahead.
Thanks for coming, Kara. And earlier, this is kind of interesting that you're on the same agenda because earlier today we got a report from the program that the county is investing in at the middle school and high school level to really support student mental health. So I appreciate what you're doing, and it's a lot of work. We got to start early with kids, not wait till they're middle school or high school. So that's good. So you've brought in, it looks like you've brought in about $200,000 to match what the county put in. So are you expecting to see that type of match continuing?
Yes, so we know for sure that 90,000 of that will be renewed for the next 2 years, for 3 years, moving forward. And then so the Women Helping Women Foundation Fund, that's a fund that every other year they have a focus on education. So we'd be able to apply for that. But we've had individuals reach out to us and invite us to apply for various grants. So we do believe that we'll be able to reach back. Again, this is it turned into a 3-year pilot project. And the understanding behind that is really that 1 year is just not enough. There's so much that, hitting the ground that, you need to work out and, adjustments need to be made. What is working, what isn't working. And so to really get the numbers, including kindergarten readiness, really to see what are the effects of this, you need a good 3 years. We need a baseline. We've gotten our access to that now. And so some of this is it's still in development, but absolutely see the excitement from the community around it.
So you'll get to be able to test the kids for their readiness and then test them like a year, like at the end of that school year to see what measures have changed.
So within early childhood education, we do assessments throughout the year. At Little Scholars, we do quarterly assessments. But the real disruption happens when we graduate a student from kindergarten or from pre-K and send them to kindergarten. And the school does their assessment. So that, some schools right now are at a 2% kindergarten readiness rate in Spokane County. Some are at a 0% kindergarten readiness rate. Those numbers, we don't know where those numbers come from. Like who was the 2%? Where did they come from? What this is going to give us access to is to know which childcare centers or what those childcare centers kindergarten readiness rates are.
Oh.
So if for some reason, in the math domain for kindergarten readiness, Little Scholars is low, I can adjust my curriculum going into that next school year. We are looking at what I would like to see is this opened up to the entirety of our county so that we can all adjust and move forward in ensuring that we raise these numbers. Right now, this is historic. Private childcare centers, the childcare centers that are doing preschool, that are doing pre-kindergarten, they haven't had access to those numbers. And so this really is going to change the way that we view kindergarten readiness.
So one last follow-up, and I was looking over at Commissioner Jordan, because I know you're on the Launch Northwest committee board. The Launch Northwest effort is supposed to be this cradle to career, helping our community support kids cradle to career so they can be college or career ready coming out of high school. And we know kindergarten readiness is a huge indicator. So is Launch Northwest involved with investing in any of these programs, or could they be?
It's on one of
It's one of them. Okay.
I had a question about that too, but yeah,
Okay,
go.
well, I just wondered if that could be, I know the county has contributed and the city a lot to the Launch Northwest effort, and I know they're trying to get contracts in place, you know, before the end of this year, since the ARP money
Yes.
needs to be spent over the next 2 years, so that, maybe that was your question. I'm just wondering if that's.
You said receive $90,000 staffing, 3 years grant, so $270,000 total from Launch Northwest.
Yes.
I was just wondering if that
Is
could
that a
be-
part of the 5 million we gave in ARP to Launch Northwest? Is that 270,000 out of the 5 million that we
I would.
essentially, is it passed through to your program?
Yeah, I would love to be able to answer that. What I understand is that they braided funding, and so I don't have all the answers to that. I don't have the specifics. I just wanna
They
speak to
probably
their
raise some
budget.
private funds too.
Yeah, I don't wanna speak for their budget.
Anyway, I was just wondering if that could be a source, knowing that I think we're gonna get an ARP update next on our agenda, but just wondering if that could be a source of increased support. I know it's on there right now, just wondering if it could increase to be able to support more childcare centers throughout the county, as you're talking about.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely.
anyway.
Yeah, question.
Oh, no, that was my
Oh.
question. Just wondering if that portion of that Launch Northwest funding was the county's ARP funding.
And I'm not sure specifically on the source. I'll check and let the board know, but I just have
Okay,
a
go for it.
question. Can I just kind of summarize? First of all, thank you for this, and it's pretty amazing what you've been able to do in just a year, getting this off the ground. And Commissioner Waldorf and I are also on the Priority Spokane board, and I know if you start listing your partners, but it might be shorter just to say who you're not partnering with. So just looking at this 1 year that you've been able to do so far, am I gathering right? You're basically saying there's a huge need. We're hearing really good testimonial feedback from the program. You're seeing maybe some promising initial data. Some of the kind of negative feedback from staff is lowering in terms of culture and how they're feeling at the job. Kind of flat on the positive, but down on the negative.
Yes.
You're seeing several of the centers see reductions in problematic behaviors. You're bringing on WSU to kind of take that data analysis to the next level over the course of the pilot program. Is that kind of accurate?
Absolutely.
And then you're trying to braid together all these different grants and funding sources to keep it going forward. Do you have a specific ask for the county for this coming year? Basically, the county gave startup funds. Are those about to run out? What are you hoping for from the county for the next year?
So those funds are fairly depleted at this point. We are asking 350,000 for this upcoming year. And of course, that will be matched with grants. And this is just for the very basic necessities of this project. Yes, 350,000.
And then just following up, if that was not provided, what would happen in the program most likely?
The program would be ending fairly soon. This is a pilot project. It's going to take time. It's about a 2-year process to get a VHA. And again, around building trust. So we have 3 centers. We've just had a 4th center actually reach out. We did some initial call outs, and then one of the centers reached out and was like, hey, we got to get somebody in here right now. So it's building trust in the community. Childcare centers have been under-resourced, understaffed, under-supported from our community at large for a very long time. And so building that trust to say, we're one of you. We're in the trenches. We know what is going on. Dr. Irma has a background in early childhood education, right? So we're ingrained in this, we're bought in, but we have to build that trust with the staff. So 3-year pilot, get the project up and going so that it can stand on its own, have its billable services. And I do want to be very clear. I hope that this is something that the county sees value in and will continue to invest in it. It's leading the way right now. And people are already taking notice and coming on board. But long-term, I'd like to see this be something that the county says, we believe in it. Mental health for children, behavioral health for children, and support for those who care for them is vital to our work. And so we'd like to continue that partnership ongoing. Maybe not at 350,000, but pilot project for the.
So is that program currently in our mental health sales tax kind of draft budget for next year? Was that would take a decision board?
Take decision by the board.
Okay. Okay. Well, I personally, just speaking for myself, serving on the Priority Spokane board's been interesting because, as Commissioner Waldron know, that group includes hospitals, other local governments, higher education, all sorts of different stakeholders. And through that long process of gathering community input, they've looked at housing and behavioral health and different issue areas and kind of settled on childcare as a focus area. And as the process of kind of refining that exact project goes along and goes forward, there's been a lot of focus on this pilot as leading the way and on the idea of trying to support those teachers who are very burdened and stressed out. And so I think the county has led on this in this investment. Personally, I'd like to see it continue so that we can see this through. And I just commend you on the things you're doing to really bring that data analysis so that we can see the results, pursue those other funding sources. So it's not just the county, it's a true partnership. So I'm hoping we can make that happen.
Could I add just a little bit? I really see, even though the focus is on mental health, it's really a workforce development program. And, you know, the community through the Priority Spokane process chose childcare access and growing more childcare opportunities as the #1 priority to be working on right now. And we're not going to do that unless we have people willing to work and stay in the workforce to provide high quality childcare. And so it's really it's a workforce investment and a mental health and investment in, you know, kindergarten readiness all in one. So I would like to continue funding to get to the next step of the pilot program so we can get better data, and also you can get better data from the school districts too about where you could improve to help kids be more kindergarten ready, as well as your workforce. Like, it'd be interesting to look at the numbers like of people that stay on in your workforce, people that leave, get more of that survey data to understand. That will help inform Priority Spokane's strategies moving forward.
That's one of the reasons why this was so significant, in that a lot of the time, so our state has a WAC that makes it just holds centers more accountable for suspension and expulsion, which we know contributes to the preschool to prison pipeline, right? The problem is that when you have these extreme behaviors in a classroom, the teacher isn't able to send that child home. If the child is, doing things that can be disruptive or harmful in the classroom, then you have an increased burnout on the teacher. And so then you have teacher turnover, an extensive amount of teacher turnover, which then leads to the traumatizing, re-traumatizing of students. And it just becomes this cyclical process. And really what this program has done, when we say 88% of the students are able to stay in class and 58% of the teachers are staying when you have a 6-month turnover, that is incredible. That is incredible. So what we're seeing is that we're able to kind of disrupt that. We're able to keep students in the classroom, but give the teachers the support and the skills that they need to help manage and support those behaviors, because the behaviors are real. Let's be honest, we're post-COVID. These students are struggling. Social emotional skill sets those aren't as developed as they typically were. And so getting in there, providing the supports and the skills, the skill building for the teachers is crucial to the child outcome, so that you're not contributing to that preschool.
Can I ask, first off, I think we need to be careful on the language we use around the mental health sales tax, because it can't be used for workforce development. It has to be used for mental health services. We can't, is that correct, Justin? Mental health sales tax dollars cannot be used for workforce development, right?
Only as a part of a designated treatment where identified behavioral
Okay,
conditions.
so I just think.
Right.
Now, Kira, I thought when you had come in, when we first did the this pilot program, you had referenced some funding that was gonna be coming available through the state, and that this was just bridge funding, and that those state dollars were gonna be, I thought in 2025 were gonna be coming through. Am I remembering that incorrectly?
No.
Because I thought the state was gonna play a little heavier in early childhood development.
Oh, I think you're talking about like the Fair Start for Kids Act.
I don't remember what it's called. I thought you had referenced that we were funding the pilot and then the state was going to be coming in with additional years. So we were just sort of giving you that kind of head start to bridge you until the state funding came through.
I'm sorry, I don't recall that. I know that there is Fair Start for Kids Act funding coming. So one thing about me is that when I have a project like this one, I'm going to talk to everybody. I'm going to engage with any and everybody that will listen. So I've had conversations with state legislators and am talking to them about being more of a support. We have interest with people that are excited about it, but nothing specific. This is definitely a project that is county board.
Okay. I know with a lot of our ARP recipients, we had told them that if we're gonna fund any type of services like this, that they were told that this is just the ARP funding and that you had to have sort of other streams of revenue to keep them going. Did
Yeah.
you?
I think
I mean, a 350 ask from us seems like a lot. Like,
yeah, so I think the beautiful thing is that we weren't funded through ARP at all. We were actually funded through the 1/10 of 1%
Okay.
funding. So
Okay.
it is a pilot. It is meant to go through 3 years and then be able to continue to stand on its own with regional support.
Okay.
But it wasn't ARPA funding that we
Okay.
originally were funded.
Okay, because the ask was originally ARP, correct? And then
So
we decided, what we did,
Shifted.
everybody asked for ARP. And if you fit into mental health sales tax, we said, okay, well, paperwork is much less. Here, we'll fund you out of that.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think we kind of, my recollection, I think we had kind of agreed on that we'd tell folks that, it's not an ongoing funding source, that this isn't going to continue to be here year after year. So, I guess that's, I don't know. I mean, that's sort of my sticking point where we're at here. I mean, I don't think that the intent was to be that ongoing funding source for this program. I mean, it seems like you have great data here. You've got great results, but I don't think we ever intended for this to be the source to keep it going.
Yeah.
I think it was a pilot. It was called a pilot. It was a pilot in nature. So
And
I
it's
think
still
we're
is.
getting to that stage where you kind of need to handle this,
Yeah.
kind of absent our involvement.
And I can appreciate that. I guess my question would be, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you invest in children's mental health? Why wouldn't you invest in behavioral health when the county has said over and over again that that's what's important to them?
How
Childcare.
many childcare centers is this in that you don't own?
That I don't own right now, it will be in 3.
It'll be in,
And
okay,
3 additional centers that I don't own.
okay.
And the only reason it's in mine is that I found
You're-
it, right?
yes,
So
you're the
I'm
one,
gonna,
yeah.
the families that I serve are just as in need as any other, but it'll be in 3 total that I. So, and it is a pilot, right? So I think one of the important things is in one of the smart ways of running a pilot is that you're not gonna spread yourself too thin, especially while we're still trying to figure out how to navigate some of these systems. What I've done though is surrounded myself with the experts in the field, right? So at this particular point, I've got 3 doctors working in this, 2 doctors of psychology, doctors who are intent on ensuring that children's mental and behavioral health are met from a holistic standpoint, which is why, you know, when you look at a lot of the mental health programs that are out here, they're only looking at the child. They're looking at the child as the problem and as the solution. And really it's about activating the entire support system around that child. It's why I meet with Spokane Public Schools. It's why I meet with Excelsior, which I hope you guys were able to receive the letters of support that we received from both Excelsior Wellness and from Priority Spokane. This is something that is needed. This is something our families are struggling with. And regardless to where the funding comes from, if you don't have a healthy childcare ecosystem, you don't have a workforce, you don't have an economy. So I guess, again, my question is, why wouldn't we support mental and behavioral health support?
Commissioner Jordan?
Obviously, Commissioner Waldrick and I weren't here when the previous allocation was made, and I think it's a testament to the board to choose to invest in this pilot program. Personally, I think it's a lot to ask of a pilot to just say 1 year and done, particularly with some of the data that's been shown and some reduced behaviors. I hear the concern about sustainable funding, and I think what I see from Kira is a lot of work to try to figure that out, which is ongoing. So I guess I just might pose the question, given the promising data, given the partnerships, given the expansion to various facilities, bringing on WSU, talking to Launch Northwest and others, could we at least agree to an additional year to keep it going? Knowing that there will be an evaluation of that at the end, and I'm just throwing out the idea to maybe we can get more clarity from the state. 1 year is not very much time. State moves slow sometimes, and I'm just thinking about the capital gains tax that was just approved or not, kept going by the public as supposed to fund childcare initiatives. Could look at that as a potential funding source to support projects like this. So that's just a question about, if you don't want it to be a permanent funding source, are you willing to at least continue it for a period of time, knowing there's good work that's being done so far?
Aren't we approaching 2 years on this? And we're getting pretty close to 2, right?
So it'll be 2 years in July that we'll have been in a classroom.
Okay. Okay, well, I think we should probably wait until we at least have the full board here to make a decision on whether this goes through, and I think we should probably, consult Justin, who's sort of our guru of mental health sales tax as well, and kind of break this down. I mean, you've got a great presentation here. We've got a lot of data to look at. Commissioner Jordan, if you could get us information on the ARP dollars through Launch Northwest, and if any of those went to this as well, and we'll kind of balance out all that and move forward from there.
Good, thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, then Gina sent me a Teams message, if we could bring up Dave. He's here from the Noxious Weed Board.
So we are switching gears a little bit. So what I have sent you is our 2025 budget and comparison with the last few years, and hoping for your approval of that. The way just a little background with our budget process is RCW states we have to go through our board to adopt our budget, and that budget is sent to you to overlook, and it's set up at the fund level. You're more than willing to comment on any line item, of course, because ultimately you do need to approve that. And then I do have just a few minutes I'd like to talk, after I talk about that, let's talk about our possible proposal for a 2026 raise of our special assessment. Really with our 2025 budget, really the line item on the comparisons that goes across is our beginning fund balance. Over the years, we've kind of maintained that at a certain level to get us through the year. As you know, when taxes come in, October is really that fine line when, even though we may have a ending fund balance high at the end of the year, that October where taxes or tax assessment for the weed board comes in, it's getting quite low. 2025 budget with a beginning fund balance of 140,000 and the ending fund balance of 92,000. That puts our fund balance in October at effectively around $10,000. So it's getting down there where I'm not comfortable with that amount, but it's to a point where we feel we need to spend that money with the population, the way the county's growing and the weeds that are out there. We need to continue to offer the services we do. A great deal of our budget goes to payroll, and that's people. And unfortunately, finding quality individuals for this type of job is a struggle. That's one of my board members kind of said was, as we start to lose people, we basically become ineffective. And that's where I could see this going down the road. I mean, we're gonna still be there. I mean, we have a fair budget, but with when we set up this assessment back in 2014, we committed to the commissioners and to the public that this would last us at least 10 years. And we have done that. But that being said, a whole lot has happened in the last 5 years that we in no way anticipated in 2014. And that's us. So I guess I could entertain any questions you have about the numbers on our budget that we've sent to you.
Any questions?
Okay, if I go on with our possible proposal that we're going to develop here coming in 2025, and that would be for the 2026 assessment. We don't have a formal proposal set up. Really, what I wanted to do is just familiarize you with our process that we have to go through to do this. I think Commissioner French is the only one that went through it back in 2014. And it's very similar to the Conservation District. Some of you went through that process with that too. The law spells out the only way we can be funded is through a special assessment or through the county general fund. I anticipate you probably don't want to throw it back into the county fund. So what we will be doing is developing that assessment, basically raising the rates. It has to be across the county. Every parcel of land in the county is assessed.
And we're looking at doing that. Again, we haven't come up with, firm proposal for numbers yet. But I wanted to tell you that, and the way the law again says is we have to go through this process. We hold a hearing, and I'm hoping to do that probably late spring this year. We hold a public hearing and we develop those proposals. And then once our board approves those, I would approach county commissioners, and the law goes on to say that then at that point, you would need to hold a public hearing to look at that, and then make the decision as to whether or not you agree, disagree, or want to make changes. And I'm welcome to any and all input we can receive. So I just wanted to get that out there to you, even though it seems like a long time away, 2026. I wanted to kind of just get it in on your radar. Got a whole lot else going on, especially this time of year. But I just wanted to take the opportunity, since it does tie in the budget, that it's in front of you.
Any questions? Okay,
All right.
we're good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Actually, Dave, before you leave, can I ask what's the current assessment per parcel?
It's 12 cents per acre for certain soil classes, which is basically crop ground, 6 cents per acre for different soil classes, which is essentially pasture ground, then $1.80 per parcel minimum. So let's say a person in the city of Spokane would pay $1.80 because their vacant lot is of an acre. And then farmland would get that per acre rate. Once it gets above, you can get to the acre.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, and we are gonna go back up on our agenda to item number F, and Jeff McMorris and Heather Arnold.
Morning.
Good morning.
There's a couple of those.
The handout was in your read ahead pocket, but I noticed it scanned. It's a little bit funky. No, they didn't have one. One has the new one to put up. And you can read that, good luck, I read it all. Generally speaking, based on our previous conversation about swapping some of our ARP awardees into general fund, backing them with general fund dollars. So we can get around the end of year ARP timelines. Legal has signed off on that concept. We've met with Heather and I, along with Sally Stouffer in the auditor's office, met with Ide Bailey. They haven't got back to us yet on what they think is the best accounting procedure to do, but we're working through that with them. That's really the more the how. And then the sheet you have in front of you are the projects that we sent to legal, asking if they qualify for general fund. My biggest takeaway from this exercise has been state law, I think opting in, opting out. We do a lot on computers these days, signing up for stuff. The general fund has to have direct authority to spend money. If the state is silent, it's a no. For a parent, I'll know the silent. So, all of these except, just by FYI, the bottom one on the front page, Women and Children's Foodie Restaurant and Indian Kitchen, they have, they've cashed out, they're done with their project, so that one will. There will be about 22,000 returned. You'll be seeing that on a It's not this afternoon, it'll be next PPM meeting. They actually ended up with a Vista gave them some rebates. That's why the money came back. The project was fully done, just didn't cost quite as much. And then we have 3 we'll talk with you about right now. A 4th one, we will do an executive session. The first one in red at the top is the YWCA. Domestic violence is not listed as something that the general fund can spend on. As we looked at all this stuff, there's a lot of state money that goes through to counties and cities for this, but it might be state general fund money that they then allow us to go for grants, but it's always a pass-through type thing. And so that one doesn't qualify. However, I talked with George and Justin. George in housing has some CSG funds. Some are coming back, similar to this. They had an awardee who didn't get through all their funds. So that will be some funding that can help the next 6 months, because that is funding that expires this coming June with the state biennium. We will leave them some ARP money. We feel they're not on track to get through their funds. So we will leave them what we're comfortable with. And then George has a new CSG grant coming from the state that can make them whole on the back end if they do get to their full amount. So George's shop talked with them Friday, maybe Thursday, like last week. We actually meet with them tomorrow to hammer out the details. But we think we have a working solution to bring to you for that. So that one actually will not go via general fund. The Innovia Launch Northwest, we think we should do an executive session. There's a lot of different moving parts there. And then the other 2 we have in light gray on the front are our own county parks projects. Once we get their GMP back and we know exactly what that final dollar amount is for the parks, we will reduce it some. Our goal is to leave as much in ARP as we can, but because there's other funding there that could handle any potential changes, we want to leave that funding available. So we will reduce it some, move some, leave the rest. That actual dollar amount is TBD. My guess is we'll leave 5 to 7 million. It'll probably be reduced somewhere between we'll leave half to 2/3 here. And then the rest will go to general fund. So the project everything will be the same project. It's just the accounting on the backside. What makes sense to leave in ARP, what makes sense to move the general fund, to make sure there's the flexibility needed that works with the rules we're all working with. So any questions?
Oh, go ahead.
Any sense of time frame on having an answer back from the accountants?
This week, we didn't say that. They know we're under a timeline. Time crunch.
I've done a lot of stuff last week.
So we met with them on Tuesday. We sent them on Wednesday, everything. They sent a list of stuff they wanted the info on, makes sense. We provided that the next day. So they've had it for 2 full work days. Private sector, I don't know if they would have been working yesterday or not. But we let them know we're meeting with you guys today. And again on Friday, we're piggybacking on your budget meeting Friday. So that's the best we know at this point. They did comment that while we were their biggest dollar amount, and I think we threw out 40 million in that conversation, we weren't their first client with these questions. So the concept, variations on the theme they had been involved with other jurisdictions. Some of them were smaller jurisdictions which had different. They did mention they had one that was close to 30. So we might end up somewhere in that neighborhood. It would depend on where parks goes, whether we're in the low 30s or upper 30s somewhere. I think our high end will be 40, our low end probably 25. Parks being 11 million is a big. And then the other piece is we have quite a few outstanding bills. We'll have to pick a date certain. That through this, we're thinking the end of November. So if the bill's cleared by the end of November, they'd be charged to ARP. If they cleared after November 1st, they'd be charged to general fund for those doing the swap. So some of that would also depend on what we've really been encouraging people to get their billing caught up. A lot of groups only bill for you 6 months out. We've closed, what, 4 more projects? In our encouragement, people have closed out with final billings, so that's all been very good. We do need all these final decisions made prior to Thanksgiving, because if for some reason somebody doesn't want to do the swap, and we have to exercise our own 30-day clause in these contracts, we have to get that out before Thanksgiving to give time in December for after that 30-day window. The board would have to do another special meeting. We're getting awfully close to make the 17th, which is our last official meeting, to receive that money back and then do all the future obligations as a result of that.
Did you say you have an executive session associated with this?
We do. So the other stuff we get to talk for.
Nope, I think you got it.
So we will, this week, we will start the calling people, letting them know we're doing this move. Unless we hear 3 of you tell us not to. And so if for some reason we have some challenges, we'll bring that up on Friday. We may not need to participate on Friday. We can give you a quick update, but if we're not on this special meeting notice, we don't bring miscellaneous in a special. So we're getting put on just in case.
I think I had a question about the YWCA, but I think I understand what you're saying is that it could be spent out of ARPA money, but when you move it to general fund, then there's.
Correct. General
issues just-
fund does
yeah.
not have a DD component that we have been able to identify.
So just to close the loop, so it sounds like George may have some appropriate funding, but it's only till a certain date.
He has 2 different pots. So he has a pot that's coming back right now that he will need to use before the end of June, or it goes back paid. So their next roughly 6-7 months of billing would go against that pot. We would leave enough ARP that we're confident it will get used. If they run out of the other pot earlier, they'd still be able to use ARP through 26.
Okay.
But we will reduce their ARP award to a level we're confident is going to be spent. And we're talking about a $500,000 reduction. They are way slow on the spending process here.
Right. Okay.
They have one line up at 800,000 that they're at about 200 spent. And so it's the housing component.
Oh.
And so the George's money can be used. He has a new award. It's one of our biennial formulaic awards coming in that will be effective starting July 1 with the new budget. They assume it will be similar amounts to prior. You never know till it comes. But he believes there'll be enough capacity with the county there that he would be able to make up the difference on the backside to keep them whole to their.
So we'll keep our commitment to the YW. We just will have to look at other funding sources.
Look at other funding sources. And it still would be though, if they get to the end of 26.
Yeah, they don't spend
If
it.
they don't spend it, they don't spend it, but at least the capacity would be there for that.
Is just in terms of the decision-making process, you're talking to legal, prosecutor's office is weighing in. The auditor's office controls the financial statements. They're involved. They requested Bailey be consulted, which we've approved. Once that advice comes back, auditor's office will weigh in, I presume, kind of formally or as part of this decision-making process.
The auditor's office related to us as there's going to weigh in on the how to do the accounting. They were leaving the is this plan acceptable to all the rules of the
okay.
Legal has signed off on this side. And the auditor's office, I think, is signed off on the other side. It should, but really, the decision point, as I see it and understand it, is do we go back and amend prior year's reports and refile? Or do we do it all in the current year with appropriate footnotes and comments that are referring back to why we're doing it in the current year to the previous year? So essentially what we're doing is we're saying ARP is eligible to reimburse the general fund for these acceptable expenditures. We're just doing it not in real time. So the question is, do we really redo the past or do we footnote it? And that's the main, I mean, there's a couple little smaller things, but that's the meat and potatoes of it. I think whichever way everybody wants to do it in the current year, I think that's unanimous consent. As long as everybody's comfortable with that's the best and most prudent way.
Okay, want to move into executive session? All right, gonna ask people to state the purpose and who you would like present.
Thank you. Under RCW 4230.101. There's a legal risk of a proposed action that's likely to result in adverse legal or financial consequences to the county. I think it'll take maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes. I'd like the board, CEO Scott Simmons, legal counsel and staff, Jeff and Heather here.
Okay, so we will be going into executive session for that purpose. At the conclusion of the executive session, I'm gonna say, should we continue our meeting until after the 2 o'clock, where we will handle miscellaneous items and any items this morning that we did not get to, and then we'll reconvene at that 2 o'clock.
And we also have a closed session for labor negotiations.
After 2 o'clock?
Yeah, I mean,
let's do after the 2 o'clock.
I have a hard stop at 4. I got another executive session. Another board that gotta be up.
Okay, we'll get to it. We get through our 2 o'clock quickly. We'll take care of all of these after, because we do have an agenda item placeholder there that Randy and gonna do some budget discussions after the 2 o'clock. So we'll get through it all. Okay, so but we will adjourn our morning meeting following this executive session and continue any items we didn't get to until after the 2 o'clock. Okay, and for the record,